We heard 200 no's before getting one single yes. We needed to make the pivot because we were kind of run out of money and shut down the company. We relaunched in August and we had money until January. So we're like, this has to pick up within 4 months. And then in October, we had a video go viral and that completely changed everything. We went from making about $3,500 a month to $21,000 the next month. My co-founders started looking for new jobs. Like we were done. And then the video went viral and we were like, we need to keep doing this. And then from there, it just exponentially grew. By February, we were profitable. By 11 months after we relaunched, we hit $1 million in ARR.
This is the real of building a conscious business. The hard-earned lessons, unfiltered truths, and impactful guests. Welcome to Confessions of a Conscious CEO. Natalie Barbu is a content creator and the founder of Rella, a project management and content planning platform built specifically for social media teams, agencies, and creators. With over 380,000 followers across YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, Natalie has spent over a decade creating content and building a personal brand. Through Rella, she's on a mission to transform the way social media teams collaborate, plan, and grow online. This was such a great conversation. I am so excited for you to listen. Natalie talks about how she raised $1 million from venture capital. She also talks about how she finally reached $1 million in ARR, which is no small feat. But in between, there are so many learnings and lessons she had along the way. This is not an overnight success story by any means. Natalie was super candid and vulnerable, so I know that you're going to get a lot out of this. And before we dive into today's interview, I wanted to share my free GTM Essentials course. This is perfect if you're a founder because your marketing and go-to-market strategy can really make or break your startup. In this free course, you will get 12 bite-sized lessons teaching you how to perfect product market fit, as well as how to build a brand from scratch, how to build out your sales funnel, and also how you launch and of course bring your product to market. I also teach you how to implement and execute everything without burning out. This is exactly what I wish I had when I first started, and I had taken a decade's worth of building multi-million-dollar brands as well as scaling my own 2 ventures and put it into this course. So enroll now if you haven't already at selinaho.com/GTM-essentials, and you can also click the link in the show notes. And now let's dive into the interview with Natalie. Welcome, Natalie, to Confessions of a Conscious CEO. I am so excited to have you today. You are such an amazing founder, entrepreneur, and also content creator, and you're so multifaceted. You're doing so many things, so I'm really looking forward to diving in.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I'm very excited. I love talking about all of this stuff, so happy to be here.
Diving right in, I would love to talk about Rella. So what made you start Rella, and what was really the gap you saw in the creator economy?
Yeah, so with Rella, it's funny because I never sought out to start a tech company or a software company. I obviously knew that it was a piece of software that I wanted to build, but in my mind, I was so incredibly naive to starting a business that I thought this was going to be like passive income. I was like, oh, I can get a developer, he can develop it in a couple weeks, and then this will just be passive income. My brain was not, I'm going to become a tech founder or found a startup or anything like that. But I had this pain point and I really wanted to solve it. I was doing social media full time at that point, and I also had an agency where I was helping other creators. I was also helping other brands manage their socials and dealing with a lot of social media content on the personal side and on the business side of things. And so I realized that the tools that were out there were super inefficient and they were really outdated and just not made for social content. Like I was using ClickUp, I tried Notion, I tried Asana and Trello, like I tried every project management tool. I was doing spreadsheets, I tried all of the content schedulers, and I just kept seeing this gap that like, why am I switching tab between tab? Why am I constantly copying and pasting something from Asana into the content scheduler, into the spreadsheet? Like, I just felt like there was so many inefficient systems that people in social media were using, and there was not a better solution. And so I really wanted to build something that was that solution for streamlining the content creation process. And we had actually started Rella for creators instead of for businesses, which now it's more of a business tool rather than like an individual tool. And we've completely relaunched, and I'm happy to chat about that too. But it was just really through my experience of being so annoyed with what I was currently using and wanting to fix it. but it was not because I wanted to be a tech founder. I had no idea what that meant.
I think it's great when it's like a personal problem you're trying to solve. There's a lot there, and I definitely do want to talk about your pivot from targeting creators to businesses, and we can chat about that later. But going back, you never sought out to be a tech founder, and you don't have a coding background. And so how did you get your first developers or coding team members?
Yeah, so I have co-founders and they're the technical side of the company. But at first, obviously, I didn't even know them. Like I was introduced to them from a mutual friend. I had looked on a bunch of different freelancing sites for a developer because, again, I thought this was going to be a project that I could just hire someone for. So I was looking at like Fiverr and Upwork and all of these other websites that put you in contact with people that can help you develop something. And I just started sharing my idea with these people. I had this running Google Doc of all of the features I wanted, what it was going to look like. Everything that was in my head, I just wrote it out in a document. And I was sharing it to these developers, and I just felt like they didn't really understand it. I kept thinking like, okay, if I need to change something, if something goes wrong, they're just hired out on a project basis, and they're not going to be able to like fix it or like really be invested in this. And so I realized that I needed someone a bit more hands-on. I didn't necessarily think I needed co-founders still, but I needed someone that was maybe on an ongoing basis, not just like a 2-month project. I had reached out to mutual friends, if anyone knows anyone that can help me develop this. And one of my friends introduced me to my co-founders today. They had a software consultancy and they were helping build and develop apps for startups in the local area. And so I chatted with them. I felt like they really understood it. It helped that we had mutual friends. We got along really well. And then we started working together. But we didn't become co-founders until probably 6 months in. So yeah, we started working together at first. And then I realized, and we both realized, let's jump into this together.
That's amazing that you had friends and mutuals. And so what was that journey like from bringing them on and then having them as co-founders? Because it did sound like it was mutually beneficial, which is great. But I do imagine on both sides, it is a big commitment. So I would love for you to dive a little bit deeper about that.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful because we were all really young. Like I was 25 and then my co-founders were like fresh out of college. They were 22, I believe, or 23. We didn't really have as many responsibilities. Like this was also, I had moved back home after New York because of COVID. So I was living at home for a little bit. My co-founders were still living in like the college town that we went to school in. They were all living together, like paying $300 a month in rent. It was like very low stakes. Like they were definitely living like the ramen noodle co-founder lifestyle. They had always said that they wanted something to sink their teeth into and actually work on besides just like doing the consultancy, which they were doing. I realized like I really needed co-founders because I wanted someone to help me with this. That's how the transition went from working together to becoming co-founders. But it was also just all three really understood the vision and wanted to build this together because we were already working together from a consulting capacity. And we worked really well together. So we were like, okay, let's just dive right in and do this. We were not getting paid or anything like that. So they had some side jobs that they were doing. I obviously had content creation still, so I was fine with that. But yeah, it was a typical startup struggle of we aren't making money, but we really want to build this together.
Yeah, I think it's so great that you highlighted that and you're so real about it because a lot of the times people don't talk about the fact that sometimes they have to like waitress on the side or they have to, do another job or something. So with you and your co-founders in the early days before you got investor money, how did you balance all of it and how did you manage all of that?
Yeah, my co-founders were working on a couple of other like developer roles as well. So they weren't like full-time anywhere, but they had the consultancy stuff. So they were still doing like contractor work, which honestly was fine because they were also developing their skills. Like we were so young. Looking back at starting this company, all three of us, and how little we knew and how naive we were and just like how little skills I even think we had. I'm so impressed that we're still here because we were all learning as we go. My co-founders are self-taught developers. They're obviously like really great at what they do, but 4 years ago, we were all learning. We were all figuring it out. So I think that their side jobs actually really helped benefit Rella in the end because of like the skills that we were refining. And then same with my social media stuff. I was still doing content creation full time. It still really helped with what we were doing at Rella because it was bringing people to Rella. It was giving brand awareness. We were marketing it. So I think even though we had those things that we were doing, it still ultimately helped Rella in the end. But yeah, balancing it was hard in the sense of like time. It was really hard to balance time-wise, but they never took on like a full-time role. They were always doing hourly work. So they always still prioritized Rella and were able to get it done.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's very much so like building the plane while you're flying it and you're learning as you go. But I guess this is a good time to chat about this because I am always in awe of how much content you put out. And it's also really, really good content that I feel like is missing in this space. But it's not like your only full-time job. You're also running Rella's. So I guess in the early days, how did you manage it? And then now, since Rella's even bigger, how has that changed? What have you learned? What are you doing differently? I would just love to pick your brain on that because I think a lot of founders now are also doing content creation.
Yeah, because you have to. I think that for me, I always saw it as Rella and content had this Venn diagram where my content still helped Rella. So it wasn't like I was doing something totally different that didn't have anything to do with Rella and they were completely separate. If people found me on social media and followed me, they were hearing about Rella. So it was in a way a marketing channel. So I never viewed it as, oh, this is two separate worlds. I think that would be a lot harder if I was doing like two separate, completely different businesses. But I see a lot of overlap with Rella and with my content. And another thing is I am just not a perfectionist, which I think is a really great thing in content creation. I think content creators need to work on being less of a perfectionist because in this day and age of social media, quality matters less than quantity. And not even quality, but more like the value you're giving. Like you can give really great value with just setting up your phone, hitting play, talking, and then hitting upload. That can be really valuable depending on what you're saying. It doesn't have to be the best camera, the best editing, 5 hours to edit a reel. Like you don't have to do that. And I think a lot of creators don't upload because they're like, oh, it just doesn't look as good, or, you know, it's not as pretty as I wanted it to be, or I don't like the aesthetic, whatever. Then they're missing out on a lot of opportunities to get in front of the right people because social media now is about consistency and it's about the value you're giving people. And that really most of the time does not have to do with quality. I think it obviously depends. If you're a photographer, a videographer, your whole thing is making like really cool edits, then people aren't expecting you to upload every single day or every single week. But for 95% of creators, that's not the case. And so you just got to focus on like uploading content. And if you're a founder, don't worry as much of what it looks like, just provide value. So set up your camera, film what you're doing, and just upload that day. Make it a challenge for yourself.
Yeah, I love that. I think I definitely fall into the perfectionistic camp, which is why I'm struggling.
You cannot be a perfectionist.
I know. I need to just let it go. I like the idea of a challenge. And I think TikTok is such a good way to upload something, test it out, do whatever. And I think it's great you're not a perfectionist, but for people that are more like me, do you think like a challenge would work well? Or what do you think could get us out of that mindset just to start uploading things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think challenges are great because typically if you're someone that is more of a perfectionist, you might also be a bit more competitive or type A, or you always better yourself and things like that. So a challenge is a good way to do that because it's about exercising that content muscle. So say that you're going to upload 4 times a week or 3 times a week. Give yourself a number and tell yourself that it does not matter what the content is, you have to upload 3 times a week. And when you are under a time constraint or a like numerical constraint, it actually gives you a lot of creativity because like you have to get it done within that amount of time. So you don't have 2 weeks to focus on one video. Like you have one day, whatever you can do in that one day, get that done and then upload it. I feel like when you have unlimited time or you give yourself unlimited time, you're always thinking it can be a little better. It can be a little better. Just upload it. Give yourself 24 hours and whatever the quality is at the end of the 24 hours is what you need to post online and just see how it does.
Yeah, I love the time constraints thing. I'm going to do that because, yeah, to your point, otherwise if you don't, it's like, oh my God, I've been editing this reel for 5 hours and it's 15 seconds and this is ridiculous. So I'm going to take that. Yeah. Thank you.
And then it might not even get a lot of views. So you might spend so long editing something and then it flops. But social media is all about testing and testing your audience and seeing what they like and what they don't.
Okay, love that. So I do want to pivot now into your fundraising journey. And I really appreciate how transparent and how educational you were in that whole process just on your YouTube channel. And I'll link your YouTube channel below if folks aren't subscribed. But when did you know you wanted to raise your first round? At the beginning of the episode, you did say like, this was just going to be a project. And so was there a moment in time you were like, oh, this is not passive income anymore. I actually need to raise some money?
Yeah, it's funny because it was never passive income.
Yeah.
Like it's like the opposite of passive income. You work for no money. But didn't know I was going to fundraise or we were going to fundraise in the beginning. I didn't even know what fundraising was, truthfully. Like, I was so not in the tech world. Like, I was so far removed. I didn't know anyone that was a startup founder. I did not immerse myself in tech. I did not follow tech founders or anything like that. Like, I didn't know anything about that world. So I didn't even know what fundraising meant or how to do it. But once we started working on Rella, my co-founders were like, I think we should potentially look at raising money. And at that point, I was like, what is that? I don't know what raising money is. So I started watching YouTube videos and podcasts and realizing, oh, okay, like this is something that a lot of startups do. They give up equity in their company, they raise money from investors. It's not like a loan or anything. Again, I really didn't know anything. So started watching a lot of YouTube videos and podcasts, reading books about it, and was like, okay, I think, yeah, this is a good fit for us. Like, we should raise money and really try to scale this. So once we figured out that we were going to raise, that's when I started doing even more research on like, how does someone raise? What do the terms mean? There's a lot of terms that are thrown around in the fundraising process that you need to know. Like, investors will ask you, what are you raising on? What vehicle are you raising on? What is the valuation cap? Like, all of these different things. Is there a discount? And I'm like, I don't know what any of this means. So I had to really educate myself first before I went and spoke with investors. But a lot of times I was also, each investor meeting, I like learned something new. I was like, oh, okay, let me look this up after this call. Yeah, we didn't at first think we were going to raise, but once we figured out that we needed to, I really dove all in and started doing a lot of research and then talking to founders who had done it and asked them for their advice as well. So that was the thought process of deciding we were going to start raising.
That makes sense. And with anything, you don't know it before and then you apply yourself and then you learn a lot. Were there any specific resources you wanted to share just in case someone's similar to your shoes before and just have no idea? Because it is a very intimidating world to try to break into.
Totally. My favorite resource that I recommend to everyone, it's probably almost 10 years old at this point, but it's the Startup Podcast by Gimlet. Mm-hmm. And it's season 1 of this podcast. So I think it's 10 years old, but the founder of Gimlet Media, which it's now been acquired by Spotify a few years ago. But when he was starting Gimlet, he would record all of his like meetings and thought process and his entire like journey of starting Gimlet. And it was so helpful for someone like me because he was talking about co-founder equity splits. He was talking about raising. He was bringing his mic into an investor meeting and hear the other side of it. That is super helpful. So that was like the best because it started from literally the idea to the execution of it. And it was just really great, like seeing the journey of that. Another one is called The Pitch. It's like Shark Tank, but podcast style. I think it's really helpful because you get to hear founders pitching their podcast to a group of investors and then investors asking them questions, and it's less dramatized than Shark Tank is. I think Shark Tank, you always hear stories of people that go on Shark Tank and they're like, we were there for 3 hours and they put 10 minutes on screen. Whereas this is more cut and dry. Like, you go into investor meetings, they ask you those questions. Like, it feels, at least now that I've been on the other side of it, the meetings sound exactly like that. So like, you'll know what an investor pitch, how it's going to go and what questions they'll ask you if you listen to that. So those two are really great resources. And then I always loved like How I Built This and things like that. I think My First Million is a great podcast. There's just so many good podcasts nowadays. Like, this podcast, for example, like you talk about business and have all these founders on. So just, there's so many resources now, but those would be my favorites.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. I'll link them all in the show notes. So Friends and Family and Pre-Seed, how was it different and what did you learn from each round and just all the learnings you got from it?
With Friends and Family, it was more straightforward because they were involved with what we were building and they had always known about what we were building. So for that, it was a bit more like they wanted to be involved. We raised $100,000 from Friends and Family. So it wasn't this huge, but it definitely was a lot to us getting off the ground. And then I put in $40,000 of my own capital as well as an investment. We had $140,000 from Friends, Family, myself. And then once we raised from VCs, we did $1 million. With Friends and Family, we had asked our immediate family members, and some of them invested, not all of them. And then we had asked if they knew anyone, like if they had any friends. You know, if my co-founder's dad had a friend or my dad had a friend that I've grown up with, they invested a little bit. So it was a lot of smaller checks, like $10,000, $20,000 checks that way. And then the VC round was institutional venture capital. We had all VCs on the cap table. We didn't do any angels.
Okay. And how much time did you do for each round, roughly?
The Friends and family one was more of a rolling thing. It wasn't like we sought to raise 100,000. It was more of like, we need money. Like, let's see how we can get it. And it was a rolling basis. I don't remember how long that took or when the first and last check came through. It wasn't as structured by any means. And then our VC round, our pre-seed round, took a really long time. It took 7 months, I want to say, from when we started to when we got like the first check. And then after the first check, it closed pretty quickly. So after the first check, we got that in July, and then pretty much we got 750,000 within a month of that. End of August, we had pretty much the round closed. And then in October, we got the last check that closed the $1 million round.
Amazing. So in your pre-seed round, before you got that first check, it seems like there was a bit of time. And so how did you keep spirits high? How did you keep momentum high? Because it takes that one person to say yes to you, and then all the other yeses follow.
That is one of the hardest things, I think, about the fundraising process, is keeping your spirits high, because you are constantly getting rejected and you have to not take it personally. We spoke with 200 people before we got our first yes.
Wow.
So we heard 200 of those or getting one single yes. And that was hard, because eventually at one point you're like, these are the experts and none of them want to invest in us. Maybe we're not building the right thing. But I always told the team, it's not if, it's when. Like, it's not if we raise, it's when we raise. We will raise. We will get it done. It's just going to take time, and it might take a long time. But I am a very much like a numbers game person, like social media. You just have to post a bunch of content. Something will eventually stick. Like, even with this, you have to talk to a lot of people and something will eventually stick. And someone will eventually say yes. And we kept being encouraged by other founders as well. Hey, we talked to 150 people. We talked to this many people. And we're like, okay, this isn't just us. This happens a lot. But you get discouraged when you hear headlines like, so-and-so closed their round in 1 week. I call BS on 75% of those, 95% of those, because we could technically say we closed our round in 2 months or whatever, from the first check to the last check. But no, because we started pitching so early. It actually took us a really long time. But I think for headlines, it's cooler to say, oh no, we started right before we got the first check, when that's like never how it happens. People are always talking to investors. You're always taking meetings. There's never a formal start to a round. You're just like taking meetings with investors. So don't listen to the headlines. Don't let those get in your head. It does take a lot of time, and it's not if, it's when.
I really appreciate you breaking that down, because to your point, there is so much of a highlight reel culture nowadays, and I really like to break it down on this podcast. So I appreciate you being so candid with that. Love that it's not if, it's when. But I guess from that first check, then after that, was it just people introducing you and you started to talk to more of the quote unquote right people? Or what do you think really helped with the snowballing of closing the rest of your round?
When you get your first check, that investor, if they are a good investor, should be introducing you to their network. So our first check, obviously they want you to succeed. They're investing in you. They're taking the first bet on you. So like, they're going to try to help you close it. It was from Liquid 2 Ventures, and Michael was helping us, and he introduced us to so many people in his network. When he was sending the intro, it wasn't just, oh, meet this founder. It was just in this founder. She's great. Look at how cool their company is. And then these investors trust and respect Michael, and they already trust that he did his due diligence on us, which he did. So it's a lot easier to get to a yes, because it's a lot of FOMO, and they're like, oh, if Michael invested, if Liquid 2 invested, then we should invest. We shouldn't miss out. So you just need one person to say yes and introduce you, and trust that they did their due diligence, and they don't have to do as much due diligence on you because someone else already did. And then get the second check, and people are like, oh, wow, like these 2 funds invested? Oh, yeah, I want in. So it's a lot easier to get to a yes that way.
Okay, that makes sense. You're obviously still running your company, and so it's always so tricky to balance that. What did you do that could help? I know you have other co-founders as well, which obviously does help, but any tips or tricks?
Yeah, having other co-founders is definitely huge, even though my co-founders don't run like the marketing side of things. So I was still having to do all of that, but at least they were able to keep the company afloat while I was in these meetings. A lot of times you also hear fundraising is a full-time job. You have to block off your entire calendar. You need to focus 100% on fundraising. I think that's just so unrealistic, because how are you going to run the rest of your business? There's no way I can focus 100% on this, because then the business will fail. So I did 50-50. So yes, I had meetings scheduled. Like, I look back at my calendar sometimes of when we were fundraising, and I'm like, I don't know how I did that, because now I like never have meetings. And back then it was like day to night
Yeah.
full of meetings, but I would just try to time block. Like I'd be like, okay, like in the times that I don't have meetings, I need to work on these things. So it was hard. It was just like balancing, figuring out when you're free and putting time blocks there, work on some stuff on the weekends because you're not meeting investors on the weekends, most likely. Just trying to find time and balancing it. But yeah, it's definitely difficult, but don't feel like you have to give up your entire business to fundraise. Like you have to do both in the early days. I don't know how some founders are like, yeah, I 100% focus on fundraising. I'm like, oh, but if you can do that, great. But we couldn't at Rella.
Yeah, and it's so tricky. Like a lot of the founders I've chatted to and even had on this podcast, it's the exact same thing. They're trying to balance both. They're figuring it out. But it is, I think, in the back of your head, knowing that it's just a season. It's a season of a lot of meetings, putting yourself out there, hearing a lot of no's. And then when it's done, it's a little bit more chill. Yes, you're still meeting with people and chatting with people, but it's not as intense. So I appreciate you being candid about that. I guess with the meetings, it is also tricky because you never know who could be a good fit, but you also don't want to quote unquote waste your time and their time. And so would you ever say no to meetings, or do you think in the early days you were just saying yes to everything? Just curious about how you approach that.
I'm saying yes to everything because I felt that even if they don't invest, it's good practice for me to hear the questions that they have. And also, I'm a big believer that you never know who can help you later down the road or who can introduce you to someone. The way that we met our first investor was actually a follower that reached out to me and was like, hey, I'm a female founder. I would love to just connect with you. And there was no ulterior motive, nothing. And I was like, cool, like I want to connect with other female founders. We took a Zoom call, and then on that Zoom call, she introduced me to her friend. She was like, oh, I have a friend who's fundraising. Maybe he can help you. She introduced me to her friend. That friend, one of his investors, was our first check. So I was asking him about the fundraising process, and then I asked him, can you introduce me to any of your investors? He introduced me to one of his investors, and they ended up being our first check. And if I was like, oh, I don't want to waste my time, she's not going to invest, what good is that? Then I would have never met my first investor. And it's not because I took that meeting with her because I was like, oh, maybe somehow. Like, obviously, I always think like building your network isn't that positive. There's going to be seasons of you're way too busy to like meet with people, and that's fine. But like for me, I just viewed that as it's always good to build a network, and you never know who you can help, who can help you, what you can learn from other people. So I was really excited to meet her. And yes, how that connection happened. I don't even know if she knows that she's the reason why we had a first check. Because it was like 3 connections after her. Yeah. But yeah, I think you should say yes to meetings in the beginning. I always ask, who do you think I should meet? At the end of every founder call, I always ask them, is there anyone you think that I should meet that you can introduce me to? And that's like how you exponentially grow it.
I love that tip, actually. A lot more people should use that because you never know who knows who. And I love that mentality of just meeting people is always a good thing, and adding to your network is always a good thing as well. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But be careful of investors that do waste your time, because we were speaking with some investors for 2 months, and I was like, are they going to invest in us or not? Every investor that ended up writing a check in us decided within a week or a week and a half. So it should not take 2 months for an early stage investor to decide if they want to invest in you. And if they keep saying, oh, come back to me with this, come back to me with that, they're just wasting your time at that point. So that's one exception where I'm like, make sure not to waste your time if they're constantly pulling you away from things and then never actually giving you an answer.
Yeah. And so in those situations, do you just like say, oh, sorry, the round's closed? Or how do you also be respectful about that? Because you also don't want to burn the bridge.
So I say this now in hindsight because I'm like, those people wasted our time, but I never actually told them like, let's stop meeting.
Yeah.
I think at one point you just kind of are like, you know what, I'm just going to send you updates. And if you want, like,
that's a good way.
Like, I love meeting you. I have other meetings that I need to prioritize, but I would love to send you our updates every single month. And of course, we would love to have you in the round if you're, if you want to be a part of the round, but we're looking to close this round. So I need to prioritize other meetings. I think that's like a good way to say it. I wish I said that, but hindsight's 2020.
Of course, yeah. Okay, so talking about hindsight, is there anything else from your pre-seed round that you wish you knew or you wish you'd done differently?
I always tell founders that especially your first round is all about storytelling. You have to be a good storyteller. I think that a lot of people think, oh, I need to impress them with my background and my numbers and all of this. And don't get me wrong, if you have great traction and you have an impressive background, leave that into your story for sure. Do not neglect that, highlight it. But you need to have a storytelling angle. You can't just put numbers on a deck and be like, invest. Because nowadays there's so many companies that have good numbers, what makes you different. And so you have to tell a good story because the early stage investors are investing in you as a team because they know that chances are within this founder journey, you're probably going to pivot. You're probably going to change your idea. You're probably like things are going to change. So they are investing on the team more than the actual idea.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but I think it's helpful to hear examples. If you still remember maybe like your 60 seconds pitch or 90-second pitch, do you want to give an overview of it?
So I always started with my background because that was the thing that set us apart. So what sets you apart is something that you should start. So I would always say my background is in social media. I started it when I was 15 years old on YouTube. I never knew it could turn into a job. So I ended up going to school for industrial engineering because I wanted to do something a bit more technical. So then that's weaving in my like technical angle of it. I got a job in consulting after college and ended up quitting because I was making double my salary on social media. That shows, hey, there's money in this industry. I ended up making double my salary on social media. So I quit my job. I started an agency. This is when I realized all of the pain points and inefficiencies, what I had told you in the very beginning, talking about all of the pain points. And then we decided to build Rella. This pitch has changed so much, but from now I would say like Rella is a project management tool for social media teams. It's going to save people hours every single week, whatever the story is. This is why it's needed because now every single business is on social media. So having a social media presence is equivalent to having a website 10 years ago. Like you had to have a website. Now you have to have a social media presence even more so than a website. You can have a link in bio on your website, you know? Yeah. So like this is not just reserved for the content creators of the world and like the top 1% of influencers that are making money. This is actually something that affects every single business in the world and they need to have a social media presence and the tools that are currently out there are not made for them to do so. Rella is going to help them streamline that process, blah, blah, blah. Like that's how you weave it in where you get them to understand what makes you different, what sets you apart. Oh, why are you the team to build this? Oh, okay, you have experience in this. Okay, well, what's your solution? And then why is this a good time to be building this? What's happening in the world that makes this a good time and people are going to need this and want this? And it's not just like a small group of people. So that's how you weave it in, but write it out. Like I wrote it out and then I built my slides. But a lot of people, I think, build slides first and then they write out their story.
Okay, that makes sense. And I guess from there, you just test it with a bunch of different people, you iterate, and then, yeah.
The pitch changed after every time I spoke with an investor. I was like, wait, this could get better. So then I would tweak the pitch slightly. So you'll learn as you're speaking with investors what can change.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being so candid with the fundraising journey. I know this is going to help a lot of different people. And then I want to go back into the pivot that you did, but you did a public pivot, which I love that you did that. A lot of businesses tend to not do that and not show the behind the scenes. And it was really inspiring and also really helpful. And so I guess for you, how did you realize you needed to make that pivot? And then how did you also then decide what you were going to do next?
We needed to make the pivot because we were kind of run out of money and shut down the company. If not, we're out of business in January. It was one of those situations where we held on to Rella 1.0 is what I like to call it for way too long. It was not working for a while. We were not growing. We had horrible retention. It was just like not a good product. We looked back and we're like, oh, we're running out of money. We tried raising a seed round for a month. I was like, okay, let's raise a seed round so we can continue this. No one wanted to invest, obviously, because our numbers weren't great. And so we were like, okay, are we actually going to invest with these numbers? Probably not. And also, if we did raise another 2 million or whatever, what are we going to do with that? It's not working. Like, we're just going to throw money at something that isn't working. Do we even want to continue this as a team if it's not working with what we do have? And so as a team, we decided, okay, we're going to do a last Hail Mary attempt to save this company. And we are going to stop fundraising and focus all of our efforts into rebuilding this product and completely changing it and pivoting and getting rid of the creator aspect of it and just working towards social media managers and businesses. Because we saw that's really who felt the pain point the most. Like creators were like really bad customers. And we decided to do that. That was super scary. I did not want to give up fundraising. So I was like, what if we can like make money? It took us 2 months to rebuild. We had 2 months of like downtime pretty much of still paying everyone. We had to let go of our engineer because what we were rebuilding on was completely different language. It wasn't even his skill set or anything. We had an employee that we were paying. My co-founders were getting paid. I stopped getting paid. And it was like, okay, we had to figure this out and it better work because when we relaunched in August and we had money until January. So we're like, this has to pick up within 4 months.
Yeah.
And then the first month, obviously, it did better than Rella 1.0 already, but like it wasn't anything revolutionary. And then the second month, it was also a little bit better, but not great. And then in October, we had a video go viral, and that like completely changed everything. We went from making about $3,500 a month to $21,000 the next month. Like it was like a complete shift. And we were like, oh my God. And before that video went viral, we had August and September and half of October being like, things aren't looking that great. So we had actually spoken with our investors, told them we were going to shut down the company in the new year, told Natasha, who works with us, that we were going to shut down and we can pay her until January, but like she should start looking for new jobs. My co-founders started looking for new jobs. Like we were done. And then the video went viral and we were like, oh my God, wait, we need to keep doing this. And then from there, it just exponentially grew. And then by February, we were profitable. By 11 months after we relaunched in July of this year, we hit $1 million in ARR.
Amazing.
We're gonna like it's just been like on a growth journey. So it's been really wild to see because we thought we were like done for.
Yeah, there's so much there. So with the early days of that, the early days of the pivot, it must have been so stressful, so heartbreaking, so devastating. How did you manage that? I imagine it's really, really difficult.
Yeah, I went through like some of the stages of grief. Like at first I was really sad, and like all of us as a team, we were so sad being like, wow, like I don't know what life is like without you guys, you know? And really heartbroken about it and just investing so much time and energy. And then we got to acceptance being like, what are we going to do in the new year? I was like, I'm just going to travel and be a full-time influencer. I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. Like we started doing well. And it was crazy because even though we had said we were going to shut down, we never gave up. You would think all of our mindset would have been like, okay, we're done. Let's just like wrap this up. We were still improving the product. I was still marketing it. There was always something in us that was like, hopefully something can change.
Yeah.
And so even Natasha, who works with us, we were like, okay, let's just pray that something changes and we'll see what happens. I am a big believer that this is like a God thing. Also, Thursday, we told our investors and everyone that we were shutting down. And by Monday, the video went viral. So it was like within that same week, it was just the weekend that happened. Yeah, it was really crazy. We started seeing like a bunch of new trials and I was like, what's going on? I was like, why did we have like way new trials today than we've had all month? What is going on? And then we went talk and we were like, oh my God. And then we went on Instagram and the same exact reel was going viral on both platforms.
So was it a reel posted on the Rella account or your personal account?
Rella's account.
Oh, wow. Okay, so what was... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no. But what's crazy is it went viral on both Instagram and TikTok at the same time.
That's crazy. So I was going to ask, do you know why it potentially went viral?
Yeah, it was actually our second time, which the first one did really well too. It got 20,000 views, which was really good for us. So we were like, oh, let's continue the same pattern. It was a skit style video. So now we always do those because they always end up doing like slightly better for us. I was just like pretending to be a social media client versus social media manager. So it was like, oh, like the dumb social media client with the annoyed social media manager that their client isn't getting it. And then it's like, wait, there's a better solution. Let's use Rella instead. And that video just went viral. It's still pinned on our Instagram, so you can see it.
Okay, amazing. So that video goes viral. You get all these trials. And also there's a lot of emotions when it takes off as well, because then you're also like, oh my gosh, are we like ready for this kind of growth? We haven't prepared for it. We were actually going to shut down the business. So walk me through what that was like.
Yeah, we were always saying if something changes miraculously, then we're still in this, you know, like we wanted it to do well. It was just like we literally had no money, like we couldn't. And we really wanted something to do well. So once it was doing well, we were like, oh my God, let's double down. Yeah. How can we get more of this? So we started posting way more, videos started doing better. We started answering people's questions. We were just marketing it a lot better, improving the product. We were like, how can we keep this up? We started putting money behind the things that were doing well. And so paid ads helped. And that video did well for 2 months. It was like gaining traction for a solid like 2 months. And then our other videos started doing well that we were posting. We were exponentially growing. Like we did 21,000 in October or November. And then the next month it was 35,000. It was like an exponential growth. And at that point, our burn was super low. So our burn was like 35, 40,000. By February, we've been profitable since then.
That's amazing. Congratulations. I'm so happy for
Thanks.
you. Just on the video going viral, do you remember how many times a week or how often you were posting on Rella? Because I also don't want it to come across like you guys just made this video and it went viral. It's never like that. You were probably experimenting and doing all these things.
Totally. Yeah, we were posting multiple times a week. Like it was a multiple times a week type of thing, maybe 3 or 4 times a week. Since that video went viral though, we have been posting almost every day because now we're like, oh, we see the power in this. Like let's keep going. So now we post Monday through Friday, essentially. Like
Okay.
sometimes we'll skip a day or two, but like for the most part, we post every day, Monday through Friday.
Okay, cool. Well, this is a good tie-in into your own personal brand as well. I know previously you talked about the Venn diagram, but how do you think you being a content creator has helped build Rella? Obviously, there's a lot of things I can see already, but yeah, just for anyone that's a founder and thinking of doing content creation, what would you say to them and what advice would you have?
I mean, if you are a founder, start creating content. I think it is so undervalued even today. It can change your entire life. It can change your business. It is the easiest way to market your product. The algorithms are so good now that it pushes your content in front of the right people. It's such a good way to test. Like, I just think if you're a founder and you're not on social media, you are missing out so much. From a personal perspective, but of course, a business perspective, from a personal perspective, there is a huge advantage in being online because people get to know you personally. They connect to your company. They feel more of an emotional connection to it, and they feel like they're a part of it, which is really great. And they actually are going to give you feedback and want to help and build a community, which is so important. And then it's just like gives your audience an insight of being more transparent, which I think more and more companies want. I don't know about you, but if I know the behind the scenes of a company, or I know the founder of a company, or I have heard the story of a founder or whatever, like I want to support them. I feel way more invested. If you go to Whole Foods or something and you're like, oh, I listened to the founder of that food podcast. That's so cool. Let me purchase this. I want to see what this is about. Feel you want to support them more, I think. And I just think it's another great way to market your company.
Yeah. And I would love to pick your brain on content strategy. I know your personal, like Natalie, content pillars are probably different from the Rella content pillars, but how do you manage both and how do you tie them both in?
My personal content has always been a bit more like all over the place because I started as a lifestyle creator. So like I've never really had a very specific niche. I think though now it's catching up to me. I like want to niche down. Whereas before I like never wanted to niche down. I wanted to post about whatever I wanted. And now I'm like, I really think the best way for me to build a community and to actually give value is by giving value, actually sharing my lessons and what I've learned and inspiring other women, hopefully, to start businesses or other people to start businesses, because I think too much content now is highlight reel and after the fact, I guess, talking about what it's like to build and sell the company or after your company's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, then you founders get on a podcast. But I want to talk to the founders that are in the trenches right now and still missing for a lot of women.
Yeah.
Like, one, there's not a lot of women in tech, period. And then there's not a lot of women in tech showing the behind the scenes of being a woman in tech. And especially not one that's like actively in the trenches trying to build, because I think it's more comfortable when you're successful and you can say, this is what I've done. And I'm not going to lie, sitting here being like, oh my God, we're profitable and we turned the company around feels a lot better than when we were drowning. And I was like, I can't say that we're drowning on a podcast because I need to present a certain way. We've made a lot of strides and we've been able to turn it around, but there's a long road ahead of us. So hopefully I can help people that way. So my personal content, it is going to shift more towards like business entrepreneurship content. And then Rella's content is geared more towards like social media managers and just our audience that we're serving.
Love watching the building in public content, and that's the content I'm trying to make right now. But it is tricky because sometimes there's the fine line between like you're actually still going through it and you kind of want to wait until you have like lessons or you've gone through it. And so my next question to you is, when you're sharing so much of your personal life and also with your business, how do you know when you're ready to talk about something, or if you even want to talk about it to begin with?
I don't think that you should feel pressure to talk about something if you don't want to. Like, I'm definitely not someone that's like, you're being inauthentic if you don't share your struggles, or you're lying if you're going on a podcast but you're not talking about how much debt you were in or whatever. I don't know. I don't think that's fair. No one owes the internet anything, but I do think that you also can't control how your audience reacts to it either. You have to be unaffected if they call you out or not. I think that's something that you have to keep in mind, because you can't control their reaction or their feelings about it. But I also don't think if you're not comfortable sharing and you're not ready, don't. And sometimes strategically, it's not good as a company. Like, if I was like, we might shut down next month, then who's going to sign up for the company? No one's going to sign up being like, oh, this isn't going to be around next month. So I also don't think that you need to be sharing things in the moment, but I do think it's always helpful to share things in hindsight. But some people are very transparent and they want to share things in the moment, and power to them. That's great. I'll share the hardships in the moment, but I still won't share like every single number or every detail, because I think some things just need to stay private.
I like that. It's almost like that permission slip of doing whatever you want and what's going to be good for you. Not that they need it, but you guys have it. And I also wanted to talk about your podcast. What made you decide to end your previous podcast, and then what made you decide to come back?
Yeah, so I've always loved podcasting. I've always said it's one of my favorite things. But with the Real, I got so lost. If you do not give me a strict lane to stay in, I will veer. And I feel like that's why I'm like, okay, entrepreneurship content, Natalie, like that is what you need to post right now. And so that's like this challenge, if you will, seeing how that goes. And same with my podcast. It was I'll interview anyone and I'll talk about anything and it's any subject. And then what is this podcast even about? Why are you having these guests on? And do you even care? And I just started hating it. Like I started dreading interviewing people, dreading having to do a solo episode, being like, I don't know what to talk about. Do my followers want more business content or do they want more of my personal life? Do they want funny content or do they want more relatable being an adult in your 20s content? I just like didn't know anymore. I started really resenting it and hating doing it. And so I was like, I need to stop this. I don't want to do this anymore. So I shut it down without really saying anything. I didn't even have the last goodbye episode. My last episode was like a normal episode, but I shut it down. And then I was like, I do still miss podcasting though. I did like it. I just didn't like what it had become. So I'm starting a new show and it's actually going to be like on my YouTube channel. So it will be like my weekly YouTube episodes as well. It's called Just Grow With It, and I'm really excited. Yeah, it's going to be all about like lessons. Like episode 1 is my entrepreneurship story. Episode 2 is things that you need to know before starting your business. Episode 3 is how to find a co-founder. So it's getting like really granular to hopefully help people on their business journey and like entrepreneurship journey.
I love that so much. I am really excited to tune in. And so now I kind of want to move into some quick fire rounds. What does your typical morning routine look like?
I wake up around like 6:30 and then I'll go to the gym. I make usually like a protein shake in the morning before the gym and then I'll go to the gym, come back, shower, eat breakfast, and then just sit on my laptop and do some work.
Makes sense. Are you the kind of person that is disciplined and doesn't look at their phone in the morning, or are you looking at your phone?
I try not to look at my phone in the morning, but honestly, I've gotten so bad about being on my phone lately. I'm trying to not look at it before bed, which like that's where I'm really bad at it. But in the morning, I don't really look at it much. I don't start looking at it until I like get to work. I'll like maybe answer a text or something, but like I'm not like scrolling on Instagram.
Okay. I feel you with the bed thing. I need to like put it in another room.
So hard. I'm like on TikTok for 2 hours before bed.
I know. And then I'm like, I'm doing content research, but it's really not.
Yeah, literally. I'm like, no, I'm rotting my brain.
Okay. And so what does your typical evening routine look like?
I've been eating dinner super early lately, so I've been really trying to cook more. I'll just cook dinner, watch TV at the end of the night, listen to a podcast, sit on my couch, and then I'll probably be in bed by 8:30, pretty early, and then I will either catch up. Sometimes I'll bring my laptop in bed and just like finish doing emails or like small little things that I need to do. Like yesterday, I finished editing a video, but typically if I don't have any work I need to do, I won't do it. And then I'll read or I scroll on TikTok or I watch TV.
Okay. And like what time are you usually asleep by?
Like 10:30.
Okay. That's pretty good. Like 10:30 to 6. That's not bad.
I really do try to get 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Like I need my 8 hours.
I know, me too. That's why I'm always like so curious. Like, when are you waking up? When are you going to bed? Okay. Anyways, so what's the best piece of advice you have received?
I don't know if it's like a piece of advice I've received, but just realizing that everyone is like figuring things out and people are really willing to help, I think has completely changed the way I talk to people and like network and meet people. I will reach out to anyone I want to get in contact with. I don't care if it's like Mark Cuban or something. If I need to reach him, I will figure out a way to get in contact with him. Will it work? Maybe not. But like, I'm very much just try and put yourself out there because everyone is just like a normal person. Founders and entrepreneurs are really willing to help other people no matter how big they are. So I think that's really helpful.
Love that. And on the flip side, what's the worst piece of advice you've received?
Such a good question. I don't even know what's bad advice that I've received. And there's so much advice that you get. I think one of the worst pieces of advice, which is very common piece of advice for founders, is that with fundraising, you have to run it like a tight schedule and you need to talk to the investors you don't care about in the beginning, the good ones at the end, and book every single hour of every single day with fundraising and or you're not going to raise. And I just was like, that's so unrealistic. I don't even know how to get the system in order. And like, life doesn't work that way. You're not going to talk to your like favorite people in the beginning and make sure that they're all aligned in this 1 week period. Like they're also busy and have schedules. Like,
yeah.
It works for some people and they do it, but for me, it just like did not work and it made me feel really bad about myself. So I don't subscribe to that.
No, it's fair. It's almost more work because you're then trying to make it fit and it's never going to fit like that.
I don't get how people did that, but good for you if you could do it. I just couldn't. So I didn't listen to that advice.
Love that. Okay. So thank you so much, Natalie, for spending this time with me. It was so helpful and so informative. And so rounding out, where can people find you and follow along with your journey?
Yeah, you can find me at Natalie Barbu. I just changed my previous podcast Instagram to it. So it's called Just Grow With It. And then Rella is getrella.com or at Rella Social on social media. You guys can use the code Confessions for 10% off if any of our annual plans or 10% off of the next 3 months of any Rella plan. You get a free trial and let me know what you think.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And that's a wrap on this episode of Confessions of a Conscious CEO. I hope you got a lot out of this episode. If you did, it would mean the world if you subscribed on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify and left a rating and review to help more conscious founders discover this show. It would also make my day if you shared this episode to your Instagram stories or LinkedIn and tagged me at Selena Ho or at Confessions of a Conscious CEO. Always cheering you on, and I cannot wait to see what you built from this.